they were using a teacup to hypnotize him, right?
They were.
So you think about how if you were living in that household as a slave or as an enslaved person, and then you hear that teacup ring, you suddenly are under that spell of I've got to go up here and conduct myself in a certain way.
You're right.
You know, so it was kind of...
And that's also like a bell.
Yeah.
A bell was also something that was used to take someone in and out of a trance.
Yeah, yeah.
In this video, we explore the recurring symbols and themes in Black horror, cinema, and series that highlight the impact of subtle racism on the psyche of Black individuals. Welcome to another episode of The Adventures of Cece and Hass.
So we just finished the series, The Scare, and it blew my mind. Did you really like it?
I enjoyed it.
And
I enjoyed it.
So it just kind of got me to thinking that, Black horror is really having a moment right now. I mean, we are really doing it. I think it kind of started picking up momentum around the time, the show like Get Out came out, and then it was a whole slew of other great movies that came out.
I agree.
Centered around Black people in horror.
I mean, this Black horror genre was introduced in the 70s during the Black exploitation period. I believe it came out after The Night of the Living Dead, and, The Night of the Living Dead had a black guy who was the lead actor in that movie, and it just had record numbers, had great success.
Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily the lead, but because he was the hero of the show, and and I believe that he lived because traditionally the black man always dies.
He died at the end.
Well, he did die, but I'm saying, but they usually die first. He got a chance to live long enough to actually be the hero of the movie. Right. And so I think after that...
he was the hero to become the villain.
Right, exactly.
And
so after that, I think that's when all the blaxploitation films started coming out. And then we had Ganja and Hess.
Right. And Blackula, JD's Revenge. Yeah. All of these movies explored the usual horror themes, that were like vampires, demon possession, Frankensteins, things of the sorts like that.
Right.
So, but today's Black horror films introduce a chilling dimension reflecting the everyday experiences of Black Americans.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that I really enjoy a lot about the Black horror, because of course I'm a horror buff. First off, let me say that I love horror movies, and it's just really refreshing to be able to see people that look like myself who are in these situations, which could be scary, but
being chased by a serial killer. Oh my God,
But what I really love about these movies is that a lot of them are full of symbolism. And, it seems like the directors and the producers that are working on these shows, they work really hard to bring that symbolism about Blackness into the horror film genres.
Yes.
And I think one of them is like for example, in the movie Them, one of the prominent ones that we all noticed was, of course, the Raggedy Andy doll, which we found out has roots in minstrelsy.
Correct.
Or minstrel shows. And so that was one...
Exactly. I mean, we did some research on the Raggedy Andy because, we grew up, well, I don't think I necessarily grew up watching Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy, but it was but I was very familiar with them. Saw them in the toy store. I want to say that there was a cartoon that was dedicated to it. So it was in my psyche, but had no idea the implications that was the undercurrent message that was around these Raggedy Anns and Raggedy Andys. And apparently when they sold them or when they were a part of some type of advertisement, it sold some type of mammy with it. You know, some type of blackface mammy or something like that came with these two dolls.
But the other thing that was crazy about the Raggedy Ann and Andy was the fact that one of the advertisements, I think it was in the 30s, maybe the 40s. If somebody knows, fact check us on this. But they showed this advertisement where they said you could beat it up, you could soil it, get it dirty, and you could even hang it.
Ooh.
Like with the rope, Yeah. And so they were kind of teaching kids.
Why was that in the psyche of Americans at that time?
Yeah.
Regular torture.
Right.
Hang that thing and stomp on it and, wring its neck and put it in a chokehold.
Yeah.
These are the things that we want our kids to be thinking about.
Right. And then one of my friends was telling me that it also had something to do with the fact that the hair was made of yarn, so it was initially supposed to be representative of kinky hair.
Oh, wow.
But over time, it became red. It was black, but then it became red.
Oh, wow.
And so that was another little tidbit about that. Yeah, so you can imagine, hanging this doll that...
So did Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy originally have a different identity?
I don't know. That I don't know. But if someone knows, please put it in the comments.
Oh, my
I don't know.
God.
Yeah.
Well, with the movie Them, The Scare, and, we may give some... going to give the disclaimer that there could be some spoilers.
We should have said at the beginning. There are many spoilers, guys. Sorry if we spoiled it for someone already.
Right. But it was an amazing series. And, one of the key things that we saw in it, was how attached the little boy was to these dolls. Or, the twins, how they were attached to these dolls. And the little boy took his with him. And once he became an older person, it seemed that there was some type of symbolism that happened there, showing how the young man, or how the boy who grew up to the older man, how he really identified with the Raggedy Andy, being that the Raggedy Andy, having the minstrel background, something that was said in the TV show, or how it was to be a reflection of sorts. Well, I believe that he felt like he was a fake, or that he was, lost in his identity and knowing who he was,
right?
And began to feel like a toy in society. That gave was a depiction of what society was, especially with him being he was adopted. He was in the system.
Right.
And originally he, lived with this single lady who had who had a home for kids who are, who have been, not adopted. Abandoned. Not adopted kids, but they are
in this
that part. And so then he was adopted by the white people, and then they rejected him, and he just had continued to be rejected. Then he met his sister, and she rejected him. Just life was rejecting him, and he just lost himself.
He was also trying to apply for a lot of acting jobs as well, and
That's
so
right.
I think he felt that he was performing blackness because because there was that scene where he was asked to play a gangster, and he was terrible at it because he was not a gangster, and so I think that the representation of the Raggedy Andy being minstrel, which performs blackface, kind of goes back to him wanting to perform blackness.
Exactly. And then you had the symbolism from the first Them of the tap dancing man, representing the pressures and the stresses of black people with, that they carry as they're trying to fit in.
Right.
They're constantly having to put on this different face. I don't know if
you're basically having a tap dance. You know, you have to tap dance to, you know.
There's this ongoing theme that black families have where they talk about their, you know, where children will talk about their parents, and more especially their mothers. And they'll say that, you know, on one hand, that mother is, you know, very urban, you know, and saying all of these things that is in line, you know, that we would call comfortable to say amongst ourselves. But then on the other hand, when she's on the phone, she takes on this whole different demeanor, of which the name of that is code switching. Right. And so, you know, that is what I got from the tap dancing man.
Oh, it was about code. Yeah.
It's about code switching.
Because you have to tap dance around a lot of different things in society as black people in order to be able to even just function and get things done, you know. And so, and I think that even with the code switch, I don't think you even have to draw the parallel of something being urban or not urban, but it's just the fact that, you know, when I'm on the phone talking to someone, I put on my university voice. So you don't know if I'm white or black, you know, and especially if I need to get something facilitated, you know, and then usually I show up in their door and they're like, whoa, who is this, you know?
Right.
But it's a whole thing. But speaking of symbolism, you know, I just wanted to mention, you know, I know Get Out came out a while ago, but, you know, they talked about a little bit about the symbolism that was in that movie as well, like, you know, with the teacup, meaning that, you know, they used the white people the slave owners would use the teacup to summon their house servants.
Right.
And that was one. And then there was another
one. They brought the teacup out, and it was wringing the edge of the cup with the spoon.
Right.
And, you know, that was something, that was a symbol of past times and how there was white power over black people.
I mean, and if you want to take it a step farther, it's even kind of like they were using a teacup to hypnotize him, right?
They were.
So you think about how if you were living in that household as a slave or as an enslaved person, and then you hear that teacup ring, you suddenly are under that spell of I've got to go up here and conduct myself in a certain way.
You're right.
You know, so it was kind of...
And that's also like a bell.
Yeah.
A bell was also something that was used to take someone in and out of a trance.
Yeah. So, there we go.
Interesting symbolism.
Right.
That's awesome, Cece. What else did you see in Get Out?
Of course, there was the symbolism surrounding the deer, because, you know, he hit the deer. And I felt like when he met the father of the girlfriend,
right,
that the way the father was talking about the deer being like they were taking over and they were kind of, getting into everything, and he just kind of wanted to eradicate them, that they were kind of just nuisances. And then you kind of think about what happened later in the film. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a way of talking about black people and, almost committing genocide. Like, we just want to get rid of them. We want to take the good parts that they have and then eradicate the rest of the problem or whatever they perceive as a problem.
Yes, that was some very deep symbolism. Something that is, if you don't know to look for it, you'll totally miss it. Yeah. And it'll go right over your head. But that is, something that we often, as black folks, discuss is how we experience digital blackface.
Yeah.
Where, in the digital world, you have all of these colloquialisms, you have dances, you have, just the whole vibe that black people carry with them that is often imitated by by
white people in particular.
Other cultures. Exactly, but white people in particular.
Right.
And it's interesting how that was a message that was in that movie that, we want to eradicate them, but we want to keep the good parts.
Yeah. And, so definitely with the deer, that's what I saw.
Yeah.
But I think that we would be kind of... Do you care if I talk about Lovecraft Country? Because that's one of my favorite shows.
Well, hold on. There was one last thing that I saw on Get Out that was also an excellent symbolism.
Okay.
And that was The Sunken Place.
Okay, the sunken place was like where he went after he was hypnotized,
when
right?
he fell into the chair, yeah. And he was in a place of powerlessness. And you know, it was like a metaphor of the marginalization of people, you know, of black voices in the society.
Oh, wow.
You know, represented oppression of, you know, and to see that, it's just great cinema. You know, he fell into a black hole, you know, but his voice, he couldn't speak, he couldn't say anything, he couldn't move. You know, the way that Jordan Peele depicted that piece to show pain through a cinematic visualization was excellent. I thought that was excellent.
And to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I could also see the sunken place as being kind of like that space where black people kind of exist every day. You know, where we're kind of marginalized. You know, you're marginalized over here, and you're not able to, your voice doesn't necessarily matter. You're not able to be heard. Sometimes you're not even seen. And then if you are seen, it's in the wrong way. And so, yeah, I could definitely see that. That was a good one. Absolutely. But I was going to say that Lovecraft Country is my favorite show.
Yeah.
After The Walking Dead. No, wait. I don't know which one I like more. Maybe I like them equal. But Lovecraft Country, and I did want to talk about that, the symbolism that was in that TV show, because in particular, the thing that struck me the most of course that whole series had many symbols. It was a lot. But the one that stood out the most to me was the gollywog curse, where the police officer cursed her with these gollywogs, which was crazy to me because you have this white man cursing this black child with imagery of what he thinks her to be.
Ooh.
And that was like, to me, that was like, this is so psychologically messed up that I don't even know what to say. I mean, that was just really, that's the one that stood out the most to me, and it was almost like her fear became not just the fear of what they were going to do to her, but the fear that because she was actually turning into one of those gollywogs at the time. That's the fear was more about, am I going to become what they think of me? You know what I'm saying? Am I going to become what white society thinks of me? Yes. And I just thought that was brilliant the way they played that out. I can't remember who directed that episode. Do you remember?
I don't. But what's really cool about the symbolism in these series and on the films is the subtleties that black people experience every day is brought to the surface in these movies. Because, you know, we know how intellectuals will dissect a book and they'll, you know, tell you what are all of the subtleties that are happening and the nuances that are happening in the book and the meanings of the book. Well, you're getting that same concept. The symbolisms that are experienced in these movies are for the intellectuals to dissect, and it puts those subtleties on Front Street to be deciphered. You know?
Well, I mean, I don't even think it has to go as far as being intellectualized to that degree. I think that because black people we often live these traumas constantly, that it's a given. We're just like, yeah, I know what that means. I know, I kind of know where they're going with that, you know? So I think one of the things that was very prevalent in them, especially the first season, was the trauma the mother was living with after having been witnessing her baby being killed by those people.
Sure. And
I think some of the things that the little girl was seeing was actually a manifestation of her mother's grief and trauma.
Yeah.
So it really, and so that's kind of how generational trauma starts. You know, this woman is just totally traumatized, and now she's basically unable to, or limited in how she's able to nurture her children going forward.
Exactly.
And so then that plays into their children and so on and so on.
Right. And in that show, and here's the spoiler, at the end of them, the scare, you find out they connected the dots for you in the series to show that the two twins that the whole scare TV series was about were actually the babies of the little girl from the first series,
of the oldest sister,
of the oldest sister.
The older sister, yeah.
Correct. And she gave those children up for adoption because she felt that she was not able to manage raising a child in that, because she was trying to remove them from the trauma. But it's trauma, that type of trauma is like a ghost in the room. It's like the elephant in the room. It just, it's not good. It can't be ignored. You can't escape it. It begins to haunt.
Right. You don't
the
see
family.
It. Right. You don't see it, but it's there and it plays out in all these different, comes out and plays out in all these different ways in our lives and in our children's lives and grandchildren and so on and so on.
Right.
Until you can face it and heal it. You have to be conscious about that, conscious of changing the dynamic in your family when you have those types of
and that
issues.
I think that it was just the way they set that up in that episode, in that series, because if both of those kids were adopted by the same family, but one of the kids just had just wasn't able to connect well with the mother. He had he was constantly getting in trouble, and the mother just couldn't handle him, and I believe she also assigned the death of her husband to the little boy.
And I also think that happens a lot with. And I'm not saying that any person who's not your natural child, or just children in general, maybe it has nothing to do with biology, but I think that a lot of times I think that the woman just didn't have the patience. The husband had died, she was grieving, and she just didn't have the patience to understand whatever the behaviors was this child was exhibiting, and chose to keep the other child, which was obviously very traumatic.
Sure, because. The other twin, the son, the boy twin, who ended up going back into the system, was very envious of the daughter, that she was able to escape all of the horrors that he experienced with the what is that? Well,
I with his foster mother.
Foster mother.
Think that I don't know the way they made it seem was that. He wasn't with her long after, because his sister had a lot of abuse with her too, because remember she was locking them in a box, and so it seems like he was adopted shortly after he was brought back by the white family, because they released him back when he was 12. He went into some other type of foster care after he was 12.
Well, it seemed like she was the one that was being locked in the box, and he was the one talking to her from outside of the box.
I don't know. I have to rewatch it.
If you remember.
I got to rewatch it.
But, yeah, the white family said that he had, some type of problems. And then, the black family felt like he had some issues. And they just didn't have patience with him to help him overcome those issues that he had. And apparently that was the emergence of that trauma that he had, that potentially was passed down to him, from his mother. Who knows if it's a genetic type of thing. Trauma can be genetic.
I mean, I don't think trauma is necessarily genetic, but I think that when we have trauma in our families, this generational, I think that I don't, like, for example, if you have a father that beats his children, and then those children grow up to beat their children, I don't think that that's a genetic thing. I think that was they learned that, from wherever their father, the grandfather, learned that it was okay to be beaten, and maybe that was from his parents, and then now he's thinking it's okay to beat his kids, and then those kids are thinking it's okay to beat their kids. So I think that we don't that's why it's so insidious. It's because we don't even realize that we're doing these particular habits or dysfunctions that are happening in our families until it happens. And then we're like, oh, well, did we inherit that, or did we? No, we didn't necessarily. You don't inherit.
I think that certain personality traits can be passed down through inheritance.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Maybe, and that comes back to the question of nature versus nurture. If it is because you was in the environment and you saw how good of a public speaker and how magnanimous your father or your mother was, and then you want to imitate that. But sometimes I want to say that even if that child didn't necessarily grow up with them, that they can still, have those same type of.
I do think there are certain things that are, a certain, maybe becoming a musician or an artist or an athlete or something that can be inherited. It is in the genes, but I feel like that what we're talking more about are behaviors. You know what I'm saying? So generational trauma is more about behaviors and how we interact with the world and how we interact with our families and surrounding conflict or surrounding, being able to talk things out or mental health or whatever is going on. And I think that is different. But I do believe that, yes, that people can be born with more of a proclivity to, say, be a bully, right? Mm-hmm. And if they're in the right environment, that particular leaning that person's natural biology towards being a little more violent than other people can be ignited, just like it could probably be assuaged by being in an environment where your parents are peacemongers.
Sure.
So I do think that that's that whole kind of complexity that happens. But I think generational trauma is more about the behaviors that we have, and behaviors in how we handle things and how we deal with our stresses and how we deal with the things that we pass on, whether we are an open family or a closed family, or whether we are, whatever that is.
Sure. Well, there was another concept that we wanted to talk about, and that was how art imitates real life.
Oh yeah, like in these black movies.
Yes, you've got. In them, you've got the gender inequalities. You've got the police brutality. You've got a number of different themes that show up in that regard in these black movies.
Yeah, and the one that always stays with me the most is the blackening, where these kids have been traumatized. Like, they have survived the night of a serial killer. And then, right when at the end, when the police are getting ready to show up, they're all like, okay, the police are coming. Let's put, we're gonna walk out and put our hands up like they're the perpetrators. Yeah. And they're the ones who's been victimized. Yeah. But that's real life. That's art imitating life, because that's so much the case for a lot of black people, where, we're, time and time again. Just like we recently heard about the man who called the woman who called the cops and they shot her. And she was calling because her neighbor was playing the music too loud. And she wasn't even doing anything. She was just kind of being a complaining neighbor. And she was a young black woman, and they shot and killed her. Yeah. And she wasn't even doing anything. And so it's just that kind of stuff that comes back up in these movie themes. And
shoot first and ask questions later.
Right. And then, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie Antebellum. But, that was with Janelle Monáe. And if you haven't seen Monet, if you guys haven't seen it, definitely take a look at it.
It was a good one.
Yeah. And that one was just rife with microaggressions. I mean, towards that woman. I mean, every time you turned around, it was everything from what she was wearing to when she and Gabrielle Sidibe was in the restaurant. And the waiter was just being, very rude to them. Yeah. As well as, just when she went to the hotel to check in. Yeah. So it was just a lot of that kind of stuff going on.
That was the lady. She came in contact with this white lady and told her that that's a very bold color of lipstick. Right. I mean, that's a microaggression. Yeah. That says you shouldn't be wearing that.
Right. So, like we said before, art definitely imitates life in how a lot of these storylines play out in the black horror film. And that's something that I think has been very incredible for us as black people, to be able to see how sometimes the lives that we live are actually the horror that's happening.
That's right. And also in Antebellum, how they kidnapped all of the black thought leaders and heroes of that society, captured them and enslaved them. You know, it was like it was a theme of, you know, enslaving the minds of black people. You know, it was like enslavement of our future generations, or the enslavement of black power. It's like we don't have any power, and, you know, no matter what we do or what we become in our lives, you know, the lowliest white person is that much more powerful than them.
I was going to say, it's almost like a containment. Like, you know, we're going to contain these people and how they think and what they're doing. And we're going to, you know, make sure that society, you know, stays structured the way that it is, to make sure that we can, you know. And then they find many ways to enslave us. You know, they always have. You know, everything from flooding our neighborhoods to drugs to, you know, to a myriad of other social, economic
policing things. Us, stop and frisk, can feel comfortable even in our own neighborhoods. You know, to false accusations. And killing.
Right. And then if that doesn't work, we'll just kill them.
We'll just kill them. You know, and get off.
Right.
You know, away with it. But we're going to end this video with something pretty cool. We also noticed there were a lot of depictions of black culture in a lot of these movies. Of course there would be, but I saw one that resonated with me, being a 90s child. You know, that fishbone t-shirt. I was like, look at that. That's my group right there.
So what he's referencing is there was a scene in The Scare, where the son came downstairs and he was walking into the kitchen and he had on a fishbone t-shirt, and we caught it. Because he loves fishbone.
That's right. Yeah. And then also in Antebellum, you know, they put on display Pat McGrath's lipstick.
Yeah, because that was the centerpiece around what we were talking about with the microaggression with the lipstick. Because after the white woman had told her that's a bold color, and Janelle Monáe was actually captured and enslaved, there was a scene where the white woman was wearing that lipstick, and that was very, you know, interesting. But it was interesting because it was Pat McGrath, and it was profiling her lipstick, for lack of a better word, who's a world famous makeup artist / company owner, and Pat McGrath Labs. So that was pretty cool that they're able to adapt these different things in it. And then of course, you know, like when you are something that I also enjoy, and this is going back to Get Out, where, you know, the friend that worked at the airport, I think it was the airport security guy, right? And just the colloquialisms and stuff that he used. I mean, to me, he was like that guy that everybody knows. Like, everybody knows a guy like that. You know what I'm saying? That's funny, but he got your back no matter what's happening. You know what I'm saying? Right. You know, he's gonna talk to you with that tough brother love. You know, and so that was a good one. And you know, so the shows are often have a lot of those black culture in it, even for what they were eating in The Scare. Like, because when they were in the restaurant, they had the cornbread with the fried chicken and the greens, you know. So it's just very refreshing to see, for me personally, because I'm such a horror buff, to see that these images reflected, you know, showing that your community also. And it's almost like that concept of, like, there was a book out a while ago that was talking about why don't black people get abducted by aliens. Like, why is that always the story? Why? Now, it's not like I want to be chased by a serial killer. Like, I want to be equal. But I'm saying that as black people, it's good to see us in this new genre that's coming up, you know?
I wouldn't mind being abducted by aliens and being able to see the galaxy.
So, if he goes missing, you guys know what happened.
I'm in outer space. All right.
But I'll miss you though if you can I go too?
Well, we definitely appreciate you staying to the end with us and having this conversation. We definitely look forward to you guys joining us for the next episode. Please comment below any of your thoughts or add-ons you want to include in our conversation. Please like and subscribe and share.
Right.
Until our next time.
Be safe out there.
Peace.
Peace.